I think now looking back, that could have been like, it kind of messed me up a little bit because I don't know, like I got hurt so much. Like I think maybe that was God's way of like, hey man, maybe you should change directions. Maybe you should find another path. But my dad like raised me like, if you're gonna do something, you got to do it right, and you got to follow through, and you can't quit. So that was my mentality. I'm not gonna quit. I'm never quitting. I mean, back then, like concussions, like it was like, okay, you get a concussion, you can't see it. It's like a bruise. Um, you kind of joke about it with your friends, and then I don't know, a week, 2 weeks go by, and you're good. And the other thing, like this industry is kind of weird too, where you can be like just the story you said with Jeremy. You can be like the greatest thing ever, and then within 2 years, like nobody will even like look at you or like, you know what I mean?
Meet the Guest. Next chapter. Part of the Coach Robb Podcast Network.
Well, welcome back to another episode of Meet the Guest Next Chapter. In this episode featuring Mr. Ronnie Tichenor. I'm very, very excited about this interview. Ronnie Tichenor played a significant role in the development of our company moving into the motocross world, and I forever will have a debt of gratitude. If you are not familiar with Ronnie Tichenor, he's from Palm Harbor, Florida, and is just an absolute legend. Most people know him today as probably one of the original on the bike riding coaches. I was fortunate enough that he invited us to work with all of his riders off the bike. He's got when you look at his portfolio of riders that he's helped develop and get them to the top and then taught them how to stay there, you're going to be familiar with names like Adam C. He did a phenomenal job with Adam on 85s. If you've been around the sport back in the 80s and 90s, you remember the female legend Ashley Filick with Factory Honda. And of course, we can't mention Ronnie Tichenor without mentioning the legend himself, Mr. Ian Treadle. Ronnie played a significant role with Ian's development, getting him. I'm not saying that Ronnie got him the ride at Suzuki, but when Ian was riding for Factory Suzuki, that was Bobby Hewitt's team at the time at the amateur level. I take that back. Actually, he started with the big Suzuki team at the time with Tomac. And if you guys remember that amateur development program with Suzuki was huge. That and Team Green, they rivaled each other. But Ronnie played a significant role in all of those. And I, to this day, think Ronnie is probably one of the most decorated riding coaches that we've ever seen. He was one of the originals and did it. And I think was doing it up to even a couple of years ago. Ronnie is, if you're not familiar with his actual credentials, he is a 125 Supercross champion. He's a 2-time Japanese champion, and Suzuki really got their hands onto Ronnie because when he wasn't getting a lot of offers here in the States, he decided to pack his bags and go and live in Japan with his wife. And I'll let him tell the story, but I think all of us can appreciate the idea that living in Japan is a long way from home here in the States. And at a very young age, he was able to accomplish a lot. One of the things that was amazing listening to Ronnie's story is how much he accomplished at such a young age. You got to remember the time that he was growing up, turning pro at 16 wasn't something that a lot of guys did. And those that did try it didn't have the kind of success that he did. Very, very decorated with Suzuki. If you guys remember when we had magazines, like the Tough ads where he was wearing the pink and the yellow, he was kind of a trendsetter with bright colors. And that was another thing that was cool with Ronnie being from Florida, bush blonde hair, running the bright colored Suzukis and the pinks and the oranges and all the other stuff that goes with it. During this interview, I do want to give you a heads up. Ronnie shares his journey with recovering with concussions. So if you're watching this or listening to this with maybe some small ears around you, I would encourage you you might want to be a little bit cautious with it. Ronnie gets very emotional and he's very raw and authentic with what he's been through. And he does share some insight on what he recommends, when it comes to concussions. He's currently under some protocols, and the doctor that he's working with, we will put in the description box below here on YouTube. But without further ado, I hope you guys will enjoy this interview with Ronnie Tichenor. It was a good one. It was a banger as always. And I want to thank all of you guys for supporting this podcast. We appreciate each and every one of you. We'll move to the story. Well, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Meet the Guest Next Chapter. I am extremely excited. I feel like Santa has come to town for me. We have Mr. Ronnie Tichenor. Ronnie, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing really good. I'm doing great. It's awesome being here. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of all of our listeners, there's a lot of people that watch this on YouTube. I know they're going to be like, wow, there's Mr. Ronnie Tichenor. There's going to be a lot to listen to it on audio. So as we're going through this, if you don't get a chance to watch this live, I would encourage you to come back and watch it on YouTube. Ronnie, before we went live here, I did a little bit of a preface video because I think most of our subscribers and listeners, they do know your credentials, and I walk through all of your heydays there. And I'm sure that's going to ring a lot of, I know when I was going through the list, it brought a lot of fond memories as I was putting the list together. I wanted to start out in this particular podcast. I've been on public record quite a bit. You were the first, at the time when I first met you as a person to person, you were one of the, in fact, if I'm not mistaken, you were the only riding coach that was in existence. You were kind enough to give me a chance to work with your riders, who at the time were AC, Ashley Feilich, and Ian Treadle. And I just remember at that point in time, your career was officially over. And I got to learn a lot talking to you, and I'm hoping that you'll be comfortable enough to talk about that here today. The thing I want to start out with is, give me a little bit of background. How did you grow up? Like, was your dad into moto? Give me a little bit of, like, if without sounding creepy, like, take me back to your childhood. Let's be honest. Some have good, some have bad.
Yeah. So, I mean, I had a great childhood. My mom and dad got divorced when I was young. So I would live with my mom Monday through Friday. My dad would pick us up from school Friday afternoon, and we would go race somewhere. And then my dad would drop us back off Sunday night or Monday to school. And I mean, that was just, that was my life.
At how old was that, Ronnie?
So my mom and dad got divorced when I was 7. So, I mean, that's when I started racing. So that was our life. And, we would drive around all across the country, and we would see cool things. And I mean, some of my greatest memories are being at like campgrounds with like racing friends and, like little motocross kids getting in trouble, like hopping in the jacuzzi with, pockets full of soap and soap going everywhere. And so, I had a great childhood.
Did your mom support the racing when you were gone on the weekends?
She didn't like it. Like the first race she ever went to, I think I broke my arm, and then like she never went back till I was raced like at Tampa Stadium at a Supercross race.
Wow.
So she didn't really like it just because of the injury factor. So she probably went to maybe 4 or 5 races like my entire life.
Did that create any kind of angst at home? Like, did she, when you came back from the race weekend, let's say you were banged up, did she kind of get on you like, yeah, this is why I don't like it? Especially at 7 and 8 years old.
No, so like when I was like, I guess it would have been 13, I moved to my dad's full time, and it was more for racing because during the week back then, like I wouldn't ride. I had a Honda XR 75 that there was like this lot down the road, and I would like just ride it for 2 or 3 hours, just like a little turn track. And
Yeah.
it was that's what I did. So
What year was that XR 75? Is that 78?
sounds about right. It sounds about right.
Did you have one of those Bassini pipes that came down below the foot peg?
No, I wanted that, but
Yeah.
But since I was in a neighborhood, like it was like we tried to make it as quiet as possible. So it was like stealth.
Yeah, that's a good point. For anybody who's in Florida, the first time I got exposed to an XR 75, A lot of people, and you may have met him, Dan, was Dan Crawford, excuse me. And he had an XR75 and it had a Bassini pipe, and you could hear that guy 15 blocks away. So yeah, that makes sense. If you're doing stealth mode, you definitely didn't want that. The XR silver tank.
It did. It did.
Yeah, and when the ball bust your balls when you hit it just the right way.
I think I started maybe on a Honda Z50. That was like the first thing. I think with the handlebars, you could like fold down. So yeah, no, my mom, like, yeah, she there was never any angst or anything. I mean, she supported me. It's just she didn't like it because it was dangerous.
Gotcha. So you're 7, let's say up to 10 years old. Obviously, racing's going well because now dad's kind of moving you in with him so that you can go racing. You said at 13?
Yeah, 13.
Okay. How did mom take that?
I don't think she liked it. It was horrible, like it was horrible, like, because I thought we were gonna have to go to court and do all that stuff, so like it wasn't good.
Yeah.
But it just, like, by 13, like I knew I wanted to be a pro motocrosser. I'd already, like, that's what I'm gonna do.
And let's put that in context. At 13, because obviously you're from Florida, you racing the winter ams. Like what races were you doing that you and your dad are like, yeah, you've got the goods?
So we would usually, back then, you would go to like Lake Whitney. I think they had Vegas, which was like the NMA, Ponca City, Loretta's, and then Mini O's. So I mean, basically all the major races. Yeah, we pretty much went to all of them.
When did you start getting some kind of support?
So my dad had a Yamaha dealership, like, kind of my whole career. So I got like a Yamaha ride probably when I was maybe 12 or 13, like right around then. And then like when I was 14, I ended up switching over to Team Green. Because like the YZ85s, I didn't feel like they were as good. They weren't as fast. So like I think my last 80 year was on Team Green. Then I rode my first 125, 250 year, and then the following year I turned pro.
Wow. That didn't take too long. And how old were you when you did turn pro?
I was 16.
16. Okay.
So looking back, that was like a big mistake. It's just like maturity wise, like I was a mature kid, but just I wasn't very confident. I was like a skinny little kid. And I remember, I think it would have been it was 87. Like, so I think, well, I was 17. Um, I rode at like Seattle in the 250 class and ended up third. Like my first 250 race, and got third because it was just really ruddy and slow. And I was really good in ruts. And, so it was pretty crazy. It was crazy.
Yeah.
But I just remember sitting next to RJ, and I feel like I'm just like this little skinny high school kid. And then if you remember back when RJ had that one picture when he was like sitting there, God, with this massive leg, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, like I gotta race that guy.
Yeah, the legendary Fox ad when he's sitting in nothing but the boots, but you see the physique and you're like, damn.
Yeah, and I'm a skinny little kid going, I gotta race this guy.
And how
So
much older was RJ than you at that time? So here you're 16 on the starting gate.
RJ, he had to have been like 21, maybe 22. I don't really know what the difference is.
I just think it's crazy if the listeners think about a 21-year-old maturity athletically and mentally, and then just think about your typical 16-year-old today. Nothing like an ass beating and a beat down pretty quick. So and you get third that night in Seattle.
Yeah, I did. That was like really unexpected, but I got a great start, and and then I think Hannah was on that team, so like I beat Hannah, and like he was pissed. he was pissed because like he was kind of like he was hired to race, but then I think he was kind of hired to help, like, I don't know if it was like coach some of the young kids or just guide them, but I think he just thought, like he was just so old school different. Like he just thought like us young kids were just a bunch of punks. And hell, we probably were. Because like back then, think about like the fox gear with like the zebra stripes and all that. Like, and Hannah's probably just looking at that like that stuff's garbage.
Absolutely. Good old Hannah with the black and the yellow with the lightning bolt. And that was about as extreme as he wanted to get. And you're out there in pinks and blues and yellows and zebras. And I mean, just think about your Suzuki's. I mean, they came off the showroom floor with pastels and pinks and yellows.
Yeah. Well, the one year I raced tough, it was pink, like pink plastic or yellow or no, light blue plastic.
Light blue. Absolutely. When you got that third in Seattle, were you riding for Team Green at that time, or were you already on Suzuki?
That was Suzuki. That was my first year. That was my first year at Suzuki. So
when did Suzuki pluck you off of Team Green? Because you have your dad's dealership now. Was your dad's dealership a multi-brand?
No, I switched to Cowie, and he was Yamaha only at that time.
Wow,
that was a big deal. Yeah. So my first year pro, I had like a Team Green ride, and Team Green had like a small little team, and I got second, I think, for the year behind Keith Turpin that year. And then Team Green, I got a phone call saying, well, they're not going to have their budget got cut. They're not going to have a program next year. I'm sorry, sorry. And I remember
you're 17 at this time.
I think I was 16 still.
16. Okay.
And I remember bawling, like, just like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do? Like, and then the next year in 87, Suzuki came, and that's when they had like the 10 box vans.
Yeah.
They had the really, really big team. So I switched, and in 87, I won like the East Coast Supercross Championship over Keith Turpin by 1 point.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Who did Keith go to ride for after Team Green folded?
Well, Keith, he switched over to Suzuki because he was riding, Keith that year was riding a Honda in 86. He was on the Honda. I was on the Cowie.
Gotcha.
And then Suzuki came out the next year, and they had the really, really big team.
So 16 years old, mom and dad get divorced at 7. You're going racing on the weekend. Not that mom was being difficult, but coming home, having to deal with injuries. You move in with your dad. You're going to the big races. This is and I'm not trying to set the stage to pull on the heartstrings at all, but this is a lot of emotional ups and downs in the first, you're looking at, by the time you're 16 years old, you're already dealing with the disappointment of, hey, we're going to give you all the support you need to, we don't have a team anymore, and best of luck. At 16 years old, now 17, was if I ask any question that you're not comfortable with, don't answer it. Was your Suzuki a multi-year deal, or were you getting in the year to years?
No, back then it was you sign a new contract every year. You didn't get a multi-year contract.
Would have been too comfortable, wouldn't it?
Yeah. And this will make everyone laugh. I think that year Suzuki paid me $18,000 the year that I won the Lights Championship.
That was the bonus, or that was your salary?
That was my salary.
Okay.
That was my salary. The bonus, so AMA for a 125 main event Supercross win paid $341. And then Suzuki paid me $3,600. That was my win bonus.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was back then.
Yeah, times are a little bit different now, aren't they? If you don't mind me asking, what would be the approximate value of a gear deal back then?
Oh, I think Fox might have given me $6 to $8 maybe.
And that would include with the salary, bonuses, the whole year, $6 to $8,000.
Well, bonuses, no, I don't remember. Their bonuses weren't that great. It just, nothing was that great back.
Yeah, exactly. And at this age, you're 17 years old, right?
Yep.
What does it feel like at 17 years old making more money than most people's parents of the kids you go to school with?
Uh, I don't know. I never really thought about the money part. I just wanted to be a pro. Like, like my dad had a motorcycle dealership, and I just grew up. I'm like, I'm gonna make it. Like, I don't care. I'm gonna make it. Which I think now looking back, that could have been like, it kind of messed me up a little bit because I don't know. Like, I got hurt so much. Like, I think maybe that was God's way of like, hey man, maybe you should change directions. Maybe you should find another path. But my dad like raised me like, if you're gonna do something, you got to do it right, and you got to follow through, and you can't quit. So that was my mentality. I'm not gonna quit. I'm never quitting. To my own detriment. You know what I mean? Because now my body and my brain are like are pretty jacked up. I did a
When
pretty
was
big.
when was the first significant injury that you remember going back?
Well, I mean, like I told you, like I blew my knee out, or I blew my knee out in Japan when I was 17.
Okay.
And I was over there with Suzuki. I might have been 18. And anyways, I blew my knee out and then flew back to LA with the team. And then I had Johnny O'Mara had a really good knee doctor. I had my knee operated on out in LA. And then after the surgery, stayed 3 nights till I could fly home, and then flew home. And I mean, I was all by myself. Like, it was this, my dad had to work, and my mom had her life, and it was like different times back then.
And I appreciate you sharing that, because when you had told me about that, all the listeners, we're all growing up and enjoying motocross through magazines, dirt bike, motocross action. In the latter years, Racer X comes around. We're seeing it once a month. You're living this all day, every day, West Coast, East Coast, international. Was that the first year that you had gone international and you ended up hurting your knee?
Yeah, it was the first international race I ever went to, and I crossed in the whoops, and my foot landed on one whoop, and I was on the other, and the bike, just hit the side of my knee. Um, yeah, like my career was just injury after injury after injury, and then I had a lot of head injuries, a lot of concussion stuff, and even like the sub-concussive stuff, which they're finding out is probably almost just as bad as the big stuff. Just
Do you
the
mind elaborating on that? Because when you mentioned that to me, that was honestly the first time I had heard that there'd been that much research. Do you mind sharing that with the listeners?
oh, so there's um, it's like the sub-concussive blast. It's like, say, where it's like you don't get hit so hard where you're like knocked out and you have like a bad concussion. You just that repeated doof, doof, doof. Like a lot of like the in special forces where they have like the breachers, they go stat a blast and then they turn, and it's like poof. They're not getting concussions, but it's like that repeated subconcussive blast. That's what they're saying causes the CTE. Um, so it's like, I don't know, like I mean, back then, like concussions, like it was like, okay, you get a concussion, you can't see it, it's like a bruise. Um, you kind of joke about it with your friends, and then I don't know, a week, 2 weeks go by, and you're good. Or hell, listen to listen to this one, Rob. Like I got a pretty bad concussion over in Japan one time at a Supercross. Was wearing Biaffi helmets that year, and I broke 3 helmets, had bad concussions. So at this Supercross race, I got knocked out, broke my helmet. I'm laying there. They wake me up with smelling salts, and I'm like, I go back to my room, hotel room, and I had friends come over. I don't remember them coming over at all. my memory doesn't pick up till the next day, which I raced the next day. Because that's what you did, like fucking toughen up, like, great, like,
Yeah.
you know. So I raced the next day, was like completely just out of it. Somehow I ended up, I think I got sixth, maybe. I don't remember the day until halfway through the race day was when my memory kicked back in. So it's like, and back then, like, again, you go home and rest. That's what you do for a concussion. Um, so I didn't know any of this. And like, actually my good friend Buddy Antonez, his nickname for me was Glassjaw, because I mean, it seems like every time you get a concussion, it just keeps getting easier and easier and easier. So literally, like, it would be like, ding, like it was bad.
Yeah.
Uh, so it's like, besides my whole body, hurting myself and knees and shoulders and wrist and blah blah blah. Um, like the concussion stuff, like I'm dealing with that stuff now, and it's brutal.
Yeah. And you've been kind enough to share with me, doing the deprivation takes and all the float tanks and the things that you've done to try to get your health back. I know it's been quite a journey for sure. When you look at the end of your career, would you say that that was just a culmination of too many physical injuries, or was it one significant head injury that you finally decided that was enough?
No, so like the last 4 years of my career, I raced in Japan. The outdoor series for Suzuki, and it was awesome. Like, I was really good friends with my team manager. Um, I loved it over there. It was cool, but when you think back then, there was no internet back then. Like, so you couldn't communicate with people. Like, you can't send an email. So I would have to basically send faxes to my family. That's how we would communicate, because, calling somebody, it was, $3 a minute. It was expensive. So it was just being like away from my family, my friends. It was 4 years, and it was just like, I have an ankle that's not great either. And I'm like, you know what? I'm done. Um, I'm over it, just because I had a bad ankle. My body was just like, what? I'm just like, I'm good. I'm done.
How old were you when you decided to come back home?
So I think I was 27.
Okay.
And then Suzuki Japan, I made a deal with them. They sent two of their riders to live with me in America for 3 months pre-season, for me to train them and get them ready. Um, so that's how I kind of ended up getting into coaching, because that was kind of my first little stint, is having like these Japanese riders at my house.
I honestly did not know that.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
And then one of them ended up breaking his arm practicing one day, and then I ended up riding a little bit. I hadn't really even ridden since I quit racing in Japan, and I got on there and like just kicked their ass. And you remember Bear Dog, Barry Kern, he was there, I think, and he's like, "No, you need to race. You need to race." So him and Win got me a deal. Like, so I raced the outdoor nationals. It was kind of like I already missed the first three, and it was like a last minute deal. So then I ended up riding the 125 nationals for performance engineering that year. And I did really good, although, like, because my fused ankle, I didn't have a fused ankle at that time. It is now, but like I couldn't ride on the balls of my foot because it would like hurt my Achilles tendon really bad. So I had to like put my toe out, which you're not supposed to do. So I was standing up around the rut, caught my toe, ripped my PCL. But then just finish racing the rest of the year, because like I wouldn't even ride during the week, and then it would just show up and, you know, get like top 10. Just because I've been doing it so long, you know how to get a start, you know how to ride the first 3 laps, separate, and then you just kind of settle in.
And what year was that you did the last outdoor national?
That would have been in 97.
Okay.
Yeah, that was like my last AMA stuff.
Now, when you were doing the racing on the weekends, were you coaching during the week at that time?
No, no. And then I guess there would have been in 98 is where I started kind of coaching amateurs. There was a kid, Donnie McGordy, Florida kid, that he was racing against James Stewart, and he was good. And that's why I really kind of I love I found that I love coaching.
Well, I think anybody who is in the coaching business, I don't consider myself a coach. I'm a human performance specialist. So I want to make sure the listeners, I'm not putting myself in that category whatsoever. Just look at the literally thousands of coaches that are out there. I mean,
there's a lot nowadays.
It's ridiculous, and we need it, right? And that's another conversation for something another day. But the one thing that I think, and I've said this to my wife numerous times, we literally have not a governing, but we have an organization, USMCA, United States Coaching Association, because of you, Ronnie Tichenor, because you did something that nobody was doing. It wasn't a thing, right? You had David Bailey who worked with, you have Gary that worked with his son, David. Okay, there was a little bit of that. You had Gary Simics doing a little bit of stuff, but doing what you were doing day in, day out, every day. Now, again, I may be wrong on my timelines. I'd have to call Gary Simics, but I know that you were the first exposure I had to, and it was pretty stellar. I mean, to go up to Waldo and see Zach Commons and AC and John Ames, and to see that core group. And it was not, yeah, we had some fun off the bike, but it was work. And
Oh yeah, it was work.
Yeah, I remember, Allen was very big. Everybody was in a single file line going out, and everybody was in a single file line coming back. And it was accountability. It was responsibility. I remember when AC went pro, and I got asked by an international magazine, how do you think AC will do? And I said, I think he'll do well as long as he can handle his first big injury, because the whole time that he worked with you, remember, he looped out at Waldo, broke his coccyx bone. That was the worst injury he'd had before he even went pro. Then he gets extremely frail, goes and kisses that wall in Bercy or one of those foreign races, and his career's never been the same ever since because of the frailty. But I always respected the fact that you were the pioneer of the idea. I think it's incredible, and I'm not, because I have the privilege of speaking with you today, but just the fact that you were willing to take all of your knowledge and be willing to give it forward to the next generation. There weren't a lot of people that were willing to do that. It was always, I'll keep just enough behind the curtain here, so you're always dependent on me. And all I ever saw you do was just pour and pour and pour into Ashley Feilich, Ian Treadle, AC. And like I said, your personal list is much longer than what I'm just spouting out right there. When you made that transition out of racing and you're flying back from Japan, I know you did have that little soiree into the outdoor nationals, but what was your headspace like coming back from Japan, 27 years old? Was it relief? Was it sadness? Walk us through, where was your headspace on that long flight home?
So after and when I rode for PE, kind of after I did the Japan stint, I did good. And because I'd been in Japan 4 years, all my points were white clean, so I could ride the lights class again. So Roger DeCoster was like, hey, would you be interested in, maybe riding for us next year, do Supercross? And I'm like, I don't know. Let me get back to you on that. Like, I'm going to have to think about that, because in my brain, I'm like, I could have stayed in Japan, made a lot of money, but my body was kind of falling apart a little bit. I had a really bad ankle, and I'm like thinking I have to move to California, which I don't particularly love. Start over learning Supercross again, casing jumps with my bad ankle, and I'm like, I can't do it. I can't do it. So I was listening to Jeremy Martin on your podcast when he was like, "Oh, when I quit, like I just I wasn't really ready for it." And when he said that, I started laughing because it's like I remember like when I quit, it's like, oh shit, like what do I do now? Like because I mean, my whole life since a young kid, I had goals. And every day you wake up and you look at those goals and you fucking get after it and you make it happen. So then all of a sudden, I don't have like, I have zero goals right now. And I'm like, what do I do? Like, I actually was pretty lost for a little bit.
Well,
Oh,
if you don't mind me asking, when you came back, did you go back to your dad's house? Did you go to your own place? I don't think you
no,
were
I had
married when
a
you came
house.
back,
Yeah, I had a house in Florida.
but
Um,
you weren't married when you came back from Japan yet, right?
well, no, I got married in I got married in 95.
Okay.
So my last year racing in Japan was 96. And
Oh, okay.
97, I raced some of the outdoor nationals with performance engineering.
Gotcha.
Um, so
Was your wife with you while you were in Japan? When you were racing the outdoors there at the end?
yeah. At the end,
Was
it was
she supportive of, I don't mean to interrupt you. Was she supportive of you retiring as well?
she wanted me to keep racing.
Okay.
I mean, she wanted me to keep racing in Japan. She's like, thought I was stupid for like, why are you going to turn all this money down? Like they're like, because they even told me like, you don't even have to win. Like we just want you. Like you're good. Like you don't have to win. But I
And I want the listeners to understand I'm not intentionally interrupting. There's just a lot of meat on the bone with what was just articulated that comes up a little bit later. And I just wanted to make sure that that context was factored in there. So I apologize if I frustrated you on that one.
oh, it's okay. And
Yeah.
I just felt like my heart wasn't in it. And I'm like, how can I like charge all these people all this money and my heart's not in it?
Mhm.
So I said, I'm done.
You made the comment, your dad said, when you do it right. And you've mentioned that to me several times, and it's always really hit me hard. That's why I want to make sure that the listeners get kind of the flow pattern of what it is that you've been through. 7 years old, riding in a field, doing really well, going to these big nationals, doing well, getting sponsorship. Think for the listeners who have been around, when you mentioned Team Green, everybody remembers the big green thumb. That was like what everybody wanted. And
Yeah.
ironically, Team Green goes away. All the listeners remember, as you articulated, Suzuki was the powerhouse, right? And here you were a part of that as well, part of the Team Green, part of the big powerhouse of Suzuki. You do very well. You get the East Coast Championship. Now you're back over in Europe. I didn't realize you were married before you went over there, excuse me, to Japan. I want all the listeners to keep in mind parents divorced at a young age, trying to deal with the split family, which a lot of us have been through that, still successful despite the odds and injuries, still successful, wins the East Coast Championship against all the odds, gets over to Japan. Your dad is still in, I can still hear your dad's voice. If you're going to do it right. Did you ever get a chance? Like you said, it was expensive to talk back then. Most of the listeners remember the good old 1-800-COLLECT with McGrath, but most young kids would be like, what's that? Did you get a chance to talk to your dad before you made that decision?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, my dad was really involved like with my whole career. He helped guide me and, you know, not coach me as far as like riding part, but just, coach me in life.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I know you guys are very tight, and I think that listeners need to understand, 17 years old, 16 years old, signing contracts that we all dreamt about was your reality, and not just one, but numerous. And then, how did dad take it when you told him you were coming home?
uh, I don't honestly, I can't really remember. I mean, I think he was just happy for me to come home. Um, like, yeah, like I don't really remember exactly.
I was just thinking, because I know what the role that your dad plays in your life. I know you have the utmost respect for him. Your wife not wanting you to come home because you didn't have children at this time, did you?
No.
Okay. So and you said you were 27 coming back home, done racing.
Yeah.
When you came home, was it, and I don't, again, if I ask a question that you're not comfortable with, that's fine. When you come in and you've mentioned, you come back home, you've mentioned that you're like, oh shit, what next? Your wife at the time is not real happy with the fact that you've walked away from some money. Where do we find Ronnie Tichenor? Is he a dude that's getting up every day and just kind of thinking about it? Do you feel like a whipping bag? Do you feel like a whack-a-mole? What is Ronnie dealing with?
It was it's hard.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
I'm sorry that I'm getting emotional, but
Nope. Just take a deep breath.
I'm dealing with head injury stuff right now, and it's like it's fucking hard sometimes.
Yeah. Take your time, man. Take a deep breath. And for the listeners, I want you guys to understand that this is an illustration that these shows are not preempted. They're not scripted. This is authentic, and this is true, raw emotion right now. Ronnie, I love you, brother, and I know you'd mentioned that you were afraid that this was going to happen. Please don't be embarrassed about it. The listeners love you. They respect it.
So something about like one of my head injuries in the back of my head, it does something to like the emotional centers where it's like your emotions become unregulated, and it's like they go all over the place. So it's just part of the concussion stuff.
Now, you mentioned you'd gone through this previously before, right? Like you said, it's kind of like a roller coaster.
So fortunately, my sister is the one who kind of helped me figure out, because I never knew I was dealing with any concussion stuff, because it had been, how 20 years since I had a concussion. So like, why would I think anything was connected? And he sent me this video, and I'm like, well, why are you sending me this? Like, what is this? So I watched the video and I was like, wait a minute, like, this sounds very similar to what I feel sometimes. And then I had another friend of mine, his name is Gene Stahl. He was a good amateur kid that rode his factory Suzuki. And he's for being young, and he's really on as far as researching stuff. And he had sent me a video from this doctor out in California on Joe Rogan, Dr. Gordon, and he deals with a lot of special forces guys. And I remember him telling me that, but when he sent me that video, I was like, why are you sending me this? Like, I don't have fucking head injury stuff. But then when I watched the video from my sister, something clicked, and I was like, wait a minute. So then I went back and found these YouTube videos of Joe Rogan talking with this doctor. And then he has some of these special forces guys come in and start telling their story. And I was like, holy shit, like, this is what I'm dealing with. This is me, which then really kind of floored me. So then I'm sorry, this is kind of a long story, but
Please don't apologize. Please don't apologize.
So I called this doctor out in California that I heard on Joe Rogan, and I get this blood work done from him, and all my markers come back. It's, yeah, okay, yeah, you have the exact same signature pattern. It's like you hit I think it's your pituitary, and it shuts down your whole like endocrine system. So, but then the problem, they've said, yeah, we can fix it, but oh, you have a high PSA, and I ended up having prostate cancer. So I couldn't get any of the treatment, because a lot of the treatment involved like hormone stuff, which then would fuel cancer. So at this time, I was like losing my mind, because like now that I know that I have it and I start becoming aware of it, I'm like, oh man, this ain't good. I'm not good right now. So it was bad. But then, like, out of the blue, Nick Romano's dad calls me. He's like, hey, do you remember David Milano? I'm like, yeah, of course. It's a kid I coached from New York like 10, 15 years ago. And he's like, you need to call his dad. Well, this kid that I coach ended up going to work for this. He's a chiropractor and he's a functional neurologist up in Long Island, New York. So anyways, I went up to see this guy, and the guy like completely like changed my life. The guy's like a miracle worker. He does all this crazy stuff. Like, so during the initial consultation, he hooks these like goggles up to you where he can see like a camera looking into your eyeballs, and then he puts this shutter down where I'm looking into pitch blackness, but he can still see my eyeballs perfectly. And I'm like standing on this thing, and then he's like, I go through ranges of motions, and like anytime I would turn my head and go like this way, I'd like fall over. And then when my pupils, when I would like do this, they would separate. So like, oh yeah. So it's like when I'm trying to read, when I like this, it's like I get out to like my peripherals and everything. I say it feels like it's mushy, like I can't, it's not sharp anymore. So I did like two treatments the next day, one treatment the next day, and then fly home. So the way it works is the first time it only lasted like 6 weeks, and then my stuff came back. But every time I go, it gets longer. And like right now I'm at 6.5 months.
Wow.
So I go to the doctor. His name is Dr. Leon in Long Island, and he's a functional neurologist. And I go to him on Monday. So
Wow.
oh yeah.
And pardon me, what's the cadence? How often do you go now? Every 6.5 months?
So eventually he says it'll be like every 10 months to a year. But like right now I'm right around, like I'm at 6.5 months right now. So
Gotcha.
I'm probably just gonna keep doing it around 6 to 7, and then for a little bit longer, and then try to extend it, just because like the last couple of times at 6 months, like stuff was kind of bad again.
When was the first time that you saw him?
2 years ago.
2 years ago. Wow. So this is, for the sake of the listeners, this is not a one and done. This has been going on for quite a while.
Yeah. I mean, I've went down every road, like like I like researching stuff, and I've tried a lot of different stuff. But this for me, like I said, it's like my family. When I get back, I mean, they can instantly start crying again.
It's okay. Take your time, man. Take your time. God bless your sister for sending you the video, and it all started there. That's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Because I didn't even know I had it. Like I would have never put two and two together.
God bless your soul, man.
Yeah, just because it's just so weird. Like when the stuff comes on, like I'll be driving down the road and start bawling and don't know why I'm crying.
Sure.
Or I get anxiety so bad, like I can't leave the house. But yeah, but then I see this doctor, and like as soon as my family sees me, they're like, "Oh, it's you again."
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah, I can imagine. And when you talk to the doctor, does he see a point where the body will reconfigure itself to where the therapy is no longer necessary, or will it be an indefinite maintenance mode?
From what it sounds like, it's gonna be almost like a definite, maybe once a year.
Okay.
I don't know for sure yet, because like I said, I've only been going to him for 2 years. And every time I try to extend it like another month or whatever.
Yeah. When you're and again, I don't want to, for the sake of the listeners, our conversation is not scripted in any shape, form, or size. I shared with you, and I've said it on the show before because it has become almost a mantra of this show. Rick Federer, professional tennis player, said, top professionals die twice in their life, one physically and the other's when their career comes to an end. I personally look at your career and it's like you're no longer getting paid to ride a dirt bike, but you built this incredible business around giving your knowledge and gifting it forward to the next generation. Do you feel like this new, with the discovery of treatment and everything, do you feel like this is your next? Because I can tell you right now, listening to you and knowing our listener base the way that I do, you're going to make an indelible mark in literally hundreds of people's lives, because everyone who listens rides. If they don't, their children do. Hearing your story about what you're doing, this doctor in the Long Island, does Ronnie Tichenor still feel like he's giving forward and gifting to the moto community the way you actually are? Do you feel that inside?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Just the last 4 or 5 years, I was working like one of my best friends. His name is Todd Hoffman. I was coaching his kid Garrett Hoffman,
Okay.
and I really enjoyed that because I was giving everything I had to him. Um, and his dad didn't, wasn't sure if he was gonna make it, or probably was kind of sure he was never gonna like make it really big. Um, but like I don't know. Since I've quit, I haven't really been coaching for the last year. I've kind of completely I don't hardly talk to anybody, motocross people, just my friends. So to answer your question, no, I haven't been gifting it forward just because like just the head injury stuff that makes me not want to talk to anybody.
Sure.
It makes me just want to like fucking climb in a hole.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm forever thankful because you called me up when you went to Sandbox and you were working with Garrett and you brought me out and you said, "Hey, can we put something together?" And I'll never, pardon me, I'll never forget that, because that's the last time I've seen you physically. This is the first time I've seen you since then. If as crazy as that sounds, but I always like to try to stay in touch with you for sure. What do you think? And this is strictly for you. What do you think is stronger, the desire to win or the fear of losing, based on who you are as a person and the way you were raised?
Mm. I would probably say the fear of losing.
Okay.
Um, because like my dad when I was younger, he was pretty hard on me. Yeah.
Yeah.
When I lost, I didn't like coming in, like, so it was more, I think, the fear of losing as opposed to the desire to win.
Okay. And what would you say? Because you've mentioned that, being with your dad is very important. He's still a significant. I know you're very close to him right now. Um, if I say too much, I can edit this out. But the fact that you're actually his caregiver now, it just shows you full circle, and I commend you for that. Um, what would you say has been your journey with self doubt? You said that you were sitting on the line next to RJ, and you felt like a scrawny little kid there. Is that just because you were literally physically smaller? Have you always felt like you weren't good enough, athletically, school wise? What's been your journey with self doubt?
Yeah, I mean, I've always struggled with it.
Okay.
I've always struggled with it. And when it's funny, I've heard David Pingree talk about this, and you've probably heard him say this about, and I think you were kind of alluding to it earlier about a lot of like the really great all-time motocrossers. They all had like parents that were married.
Yeah.
It seemed like, they had a team where sometimes, separated, like divorced parents living different. It's hard to be a complete package motocrosser. Um,
Now you're the proud father. How old is he now?
I know it's my son Axel, he's 21.
Man, I missed that mark. I was going to say maybe 17, 18.
He's 21. 21. Yeah, he's 21.
Now,
Um,
when he was coming up, I know he was enjoying football quite a bit. Is he still in that realm?
so he was doing soccer.
Soccer. That's right. Excuse me.
Soccer. So he never wanted to do motocross. He always wanted to do soccer. And like the crazy thing is, he ended up having like he played like really hard, and he ended up having I'm trying to think, 3 stress fractures in his vertebrae, and ended up having to have back surgery. So his soccer career was over. Like,
Yeah.
So just kind of crazy. I was thinking, oh, motocross, but then he ended up hurting his back playing soccer.
Yeah. We've got a client that's an eye surgeon, and he will not let his kids play soccer because of the head injuries. Believe it or not, that's his biggest trepidation with soccer is no helmet, head to head going after the ball. So to your point, exactly, even though your son's was vertebrae, here's an eye doctor that's like, no, I'm not doing that soccer thing because of head injuries. Is he still in town with you? Is he nearby you and your dad?
So he actually lives with my fiance and I. He went to FSU the first year, and I don't think he really liked it that much. He doesn't really drink, and so that's FSU is a pretty big party school, and he just didn't vibe with it. So he came back home, and he's going to college close by, and I think he's been talking lately about getting his master's in psychology to work with, because he works with he does some soccer coaching, and he also does like some after school programs, and he actually finds that he really enjoys working with the kids. And I think he actually has a special talent or gift, like kids with like autism, or it's like a lot of the other coaches can't deal with them, and for whatever reason he can. So I think he's going to go to school to become a psychologist and maybe work in the school system.
It's just so cool to me because I remember the first time I met him, this little guy running around with a soccer ball. You know what I mean? Now he's
Yeah.
going to become a psychologist and work with young children. So,
I know.
well, props to you and your fiance for having him back at home there. You know, I appreciate you sharing your timeline because I don't think a lot of people realize, age of 7, that really resonates with a lot of people as being pretty young. Like you said, on a factory team at 16, traveling the world at 17, literally. If you looked at the subject of failure, which so many of our listeners look at failure as like it's the end. For you, you've proven over and over again, one disappointment just opened the door for another disappointment. When you get the call that Team Green, and as you articulated, literally you got off the phone and cried. You're like, my world's come to an end. My Team Green program's over. Then what happens? Suzuki comes and offers you another opportunity. And I'm going to make an assumption. You don't have to elaborate. Probably paid you more money than you got at Team Green, hopefully.
Yeah.
But if you were to go through the so-called failures that the general public would refer to them, which one do you cherish the most? Which one, when you look back at the time, seemed devastating, but actually ended up being the best pivot in your career?
Yeah, honestly, Rob, like I don't try to dwell on failure, like,
Yeah.
because to me, like, okay, so that way didn't work. Let's figure out a different way. You know what I mean? And so it's like, I don't know. It's like failure is just something you learn from and you try to grow from. And
What was the biggest lesson you learned when you look back all the way to 7 in the field on an XR75, all the way up to coming home from Japan?
I don't know if there's like one lesson. I just know that like some of like my biggest, like, well, it's just like my divorce. It was brutal. It was horrible. And at the time, like, I thought it was so bad and so whatever. But then I think from a higher perspective, like usually like you learn the most about yourself, you grow the most in those really hard, difficult situations.
Exactly.
So it's like I think you can't frame, oh, that was a failure. Like,
Of
no,
course.
because usually you put a little time behind it, and then you end up going, oh wow, wait a minute, I learned this and this because of that failure. So it really wasn't a failure, it was a blessing.
Exactly. You mentioned your divorce, and we don't have to get too deep into that. Um, the divorce was very volatile. It was very, very difficult, as you articulated. Um, you got duped into a business guy that was trying to get you to build this online program, and he was a little bit ahead of his curve. He was doing things
Yeah.
that today, now literally, there's millions of people doing it and making tremendous amount of money. And he's let's be blunt. He stole a shitload of money from you. Your divorce wasn't very good on you financially. How does Ronnie Tichenor keep getting up? I've listened to you now for an hour. It just seems like it's like you're Mike Tyson's punching bag. You keep getting up one more time. I remember when you called me and told me that, I don't know if I'll let you talk about that situation as much as you want, but the fact that the guy duped you out of your money and then you had no way to get your money back, and I'll leave that the way wherever you want to take that. How did you get up from that? How'd you get up from it?
There was about 3 years. It was just like one thing after another. And this was like my divorce. It started off, I had my ankle fused, and that was a really bad deal. And then my divorce went on for 5 years, and then I got burned by a guy at a couple different business deals. And then I went into this other thing trying to do this licensing thing, and the guy ended up stealing a bunch of money and then ended up killing himself. So it was like boom, 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 boom. And I was like, what the, like, it was very, very difficult. But again, like, if I look back, like, there's a bunch of failures I just right in a row. And it's like, what's like, well, like, so that's what I mean by a lot of times there's blessings. I got really into like meditation. That was when I found like the sensory deprivation tanks. And sometimes, like, honestly, just being laying in there, weightless, complete pitch black, it's like I felt the most amazing I've ever felt. You know what I mean? Like, with not.
Sure.
So I think that's kind of the way I healed myself. I mean, I kind of healed my body and in my brain. So I think that's kind of what led me down this like meditation. And I remember my son used to like laugh at me all the time because he thought that was like this crazy woo woo stuff. But now it's like it's really cool to watch my son, like him. He doesn't like meditation, but just some of the other stuff that he's into, and like to watch him do it, and like doing it and applying it in his life is like, that's like really cool.
You and I have talked about this off the record. You've accomplished so much in life. You've had some big setbacks and disappointments, like the three that you just mentioned right there. What would you say? And there's no boundaries, right? What would you say is your personal biggest achievement?
Honestly, just raising my son, like, for him to turn out to be a good human being. That's my greatest accomplishment. Like the racing stuff, it's like, it feels like another life ago. You know what I mean? And okay, big deal. I went fast on a motorcycle, like, but are you a good person? So, I don't know. Like, like my whole racing stuff, I feel like it's a whole nother life ago or something. It's like I don't even feel like it's me. Like, it's kind of weird. Um, and then the other thing, like, this industry is kind of weird too, where you can be like, just the story you said with Jeremy, you can be like the greatest thing ever, and then within 2 years, like, nobody will even like look at you or like, you know what I mean?
Yes, sir. Yep. And for the listeners that have followed us since our first episode, there's a consistency in exactly that. Whenever somebody can get something out of you, whether it's marketing or an interview or a picture on a magazine cover or whatever, oh boy, you're on their short call list. But then as soon as that sun sets and there's not something to be made off of you, like Jeremy Martin said, laying in the hospital and not many people came to visit. That's for darn sure. Um, and you've gone through a divorce. I've gone through a divorce, and you and I both talked about the idea. You find out who your true friends are real quick.
Yeah, sure.
You find out really quick. Um, if you could do your career over, all the listeners know, we all know your public career. If you could do your career over, would you do it any differently?
I honestly don't know that I would, although like it would have been nice to have like a mental, like a, like a sports coach, like a sports psychologist, I guess. Because to me, that was like one of my biggest, like my mental game was not that great. So that was one of my biggest things. And then the other thing, um, maybe have like a coach, or like a coach like you, to help put me on a program, because I was like this skinny little kid trying to figure it out, but didn't know what the fuck I'm doing. You know what I mean? But I'm like trying. And most of the time, like I was overtraining all the time, because like nobody knew about like active recovery stuff back then.
Sure.
You just fucking pinned it. Like
Yeah.
you go hard. Um, so I think if I would have had those two things, it would have helped me become a more like complete package. But again, back then, when you're only making, 20 grand a year, like
Yep.
how do you pay for that?
Sure.
So
Uh, I'm forever grateful, and I'm on public record. If you listen to my interview with David Pingree on Whiskey Throttle, I always give you credit for my success in this industry. You gave me the first. You opened the door. I would never. I was never. Yes, sir.
thank you, man. Thanks
For
for saying
saying
that. I
appreciate.
appreciate that.
No, I'm forever indebted to you. You were the first phone call that ever, you launched the career that I get to make a living on today, because, and I'm very public about this, you gave me credibility. When Adam sees dad and mom, we go to dinner, you'd already given me the nod of approval. It wasn't a matter that they were going to come on board. They just wanted a little bit more information. Ashley Filik's parents driving up to St. Augustine and meeting with them, and you said, I need you to work with this guy. It wasn't like I went and met with them to try to get the job. I was already given the job because of your nod, and I've never taken that lightly. I've to this day still take it seriously. I've got two young little girls right now, the Davis girls, and they look up to Ashley Filik. And I would have never had that privilege to work with Ashley had you not opened that door. Obviously, the Ian Treadle and then his trials and tribulations, um, him moving from Suzuki, pardon me, as an amateur to a pro. I would have never met Brock Tickle, never would have had that championship with Brock, with Cowie, because of Ian, because of you giving us the nod of approval. Um, you know, Joe and you look at that whole Treadle family, right? Mom and dad both. You look at Elaine and Joe, wonderful people. I still talk to them on a regular basis because of the door that you opened up for that.
That's awesome.
No, I
Thanks for
can't thank
taking
you.
that. I appreciate that.
No, thank you. And this is not us just doting all over each other. I'm forever grateful.
Yeah,
We
because
try
I've
to,
never heard that before. Honestly.
nope, that's fair. And I just always want people to understand. And then when I got the call to do the Toyota TMX program, the only reason why we got that opportunity was because of the experience that we had, because of the door that you opened up. And then Toyota brought in, the Trey Kennards, the Ryan Dungies, the Alex and Jeremy Martin. And that comes directly from Mr. Martin himself. Was I got a chance to work with Alex and Jeremy because of our relationship. So these are all resume builders that go up to and including, Jordan Bailey and all the Florida boys. That I got Jordan Bailey because Jordan, his dad, Jim, was very tight with Alan, and Alan would talk about what we were doing. And Jim's like, I need to get a piece of that. And then Jordan goes on and gets a 2-year deal with Husky. So, yeah, it all starts with you, and I'm forever grateful. I'm incredibly humbled that you're willing to come on the show. We always end the show with some rapid fire questions, fun ones. You have the headspace to do some?
We'll try.
Okay.
We'll try. I can't guarantee nothing.
No, it's all good. Pardon me. If you came with a warning label, what would it say?
Oh gosh, I have no clue.
What are your 3 non-negotiables?
And yeah, let's not do this. My brain's not working.
That's okay. That's okay. How about something a little bit more benign? When you were growing up, who was a hero of yours that was non-moto related? Was there anybody that you looked up to?
I mean, David Bailey was my moto related one, but I used to have a big poster of Kenny Roberts, the road race guy.
What color was the bike? Yellow and black or red and white?
Yellow and black.
Yes.
And I remember watching him race at Daytona. And back then, they were the 500, I think, two strokes.
Yep.
Those things, or it might have even been like a 750 twin. He raced there one year, and the thing was like so violent. And I remember just watching him come out of this one turn, and the bike would just like, whoa! And I'm just like, that's insane.
Yep. I totally agree.
But my dad had, the Yamaha dealership, so he had this really cool poster, and I had it in my room. So he was
cool.
a non-moto guy.
It's so crazy because our generation, we know what posters are. Today's kids are like, what's a poster? You know what I mean? It's so crazy. What advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now, going back to when you were 7 and 8 in that field? What advice would you start giving yourself?
Don't take everything so seriously. And don't make everything so important. Because it just seems like sometimes, I don't know, like the more important you make something, the more it puts more pressure on it. It puts more stress on it. And I don't know, it just seems like the more shit goes wrong.
Yeah.
And I almost like, I look at like Jet Lawrence, and he's like very like, obviously he gets serious when he needs to, but he keeps it really fun and light. And it was like, that's not how I grew up. Like, my dad was like, you get there, shake it seriously, you sit your ass on this box, man, you don't leave, like, but it's like now, and as I've kind of worked through all the like head injury, body injuries, like personal growth, it's like you just realize like, you can't take everything so seriously. You don't make everything so important.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one. What's your favorite dessert when you splurge?
My fiance and I love to get some that Talante gelato,
Yes.
chocolate,
Yes.
chocolate peanut butter.
Absolutely. You two are speaking my language right there. Last question, and I ask it to everybody. Who's the most important person in your phone? You don't have to be politically correct, but in your opinion, who's the most important person in your phone?
Probably my fiance.
That's fair.
Yeah.
If you could put somebody in your phone, who would it be? If you could get someone's phone number, anyone in the world.
I don't even care. Like,
Cool.
I don't even care. Like, there's nobody. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's good to know that all you need is in your phone. You know what I mean? When you don't need anybody else, that's fantastic.
And that's like, and you can appreciate this. Like, so my dad's in Panama, and we're getting ready to head down there.
Yep.
And it's like where he built this house up on this mountain. It's like you're kind of isolated from everything. So it's like you don't need much.
Yep.
In America, in like our society and culture, it's like everybody's got to buy this, buy that, do this, do that. And it's like down there, like the culture, the people don't have anything, like, what I mean? But they're happy. Where here we have everything and everyone's pissed off and wants to fight each other.
Absolutely.
So it's like, that's kind of one of the lessons I've learned. It's like, I don't need anything like to be happy.
Yep. You've got a beautiful fiance, you've got a beautiful son, you're getting your health back, you've got time with your dad. Life is simple. Life is good.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
For sure.
Well, man, on behalf of everybody here on this side of Complete Racing Solutions and all the subscribers, listeners, thank you, Ronnie. I know you're one of my favorite people. Like I said earlier, I'm forever indebted to you, and I appreciate the fact that you pick up the phone when I call and reply to text messages. I love reaching out. And anything you want to say in parting, I want to give you last word, brother.
I'm sorry, I'm like still emotional. It's just like, it's just Yeah, it's like it's like embarrassing, but like it's just it's it, it is part of like our sport, and it's a part that I don't think people talk about enough. I mean, like obviously, like Racer X. Why don't they have like talk about it? I mean, I know why they don't talk about it, but it's like this is real. Like I have a lot of friends and like my old racing friends that are like suffering, like kind of the same thing as me, but I don't think they even know that it's concussion stuff. But then you try to talk to them and they're just like, um, so it's like you gotta, you have to take that stuff seriously and be like proactive and try to, because now there's ways. Well, like the doctor in New York, when I asked him, like, okay, so if you have a bad concussion, how long should you wait before your eye? He's probably like, 2 to 3 months. Like, okay, so if you had a really bad concussion and you went and saw you right afterwards, how long would it take? He'd probably 2 to 3 weeks, because he basically just resets your brain and resets your eyes and resets your ears, because your eyes and ears all connect to create balance. So anyway, sorry, I went on a tangent.
No, it's not a tangent at all. And I hope that, I'll tell you what I'll do is I'll get the information from you and I'll put it in the description box here on YouTube so people can get that link. We're not trying to make money on it. We're just trying to keep
Help people, yeah.
Amen. And
Yeah.
that's what matters the most. So I'll make sure that I get that from you,
Okay.
and we'll get that into the
Okay.
description box here. Ronnie, again, on behalf of everybody here, thank you so much. And for all of our listeners, thank you for the listen. Thank you for sticking with us. Thank you for this, the likes and subscribes and all that social media garbage. When I say garbage, it's the game we have to play to get the numbers. But more importantly, I appreciate you and your kind comments. Love the show. Appreciate all of you. And we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Rob. See ya.
Meet the Guest. Next chapter. Part of the Coach Robb Podcast Network.